Thank you very much, and welcome to the special call meeting of the Garrard County Board of Education. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you would, join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. If you'd stand with me now, we say the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And I should point out that all board members and the superintendent is present. And do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Mr. McCray made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hurd seconded. All in favor, let me know by that looking hand. All right, all board members approved. The agenda is adopted. And item number 2 is to discuss Sherman Carter Barnhart. I know that you all are probably as shocked as we are about the events that bring us here tonight, and we're looking forward to hearing from you and any assurances that you can give to us. I don't think you're any more disappointed than we are, to say the least. So at this time, I'll turn it over to you gentlemen, and whoever wants to start us out, feel free to do so.
Well, just to be quite candid, we were shocked, and we made sure that as we started to go out, a phone call just doesn't do justice to share the news that one of our partners had decided to leave us, and it be the person that was your main contact. So y'all were on our first day trip out. I would love to be able to tell you all more, but Kevin literally gave us 4 days notice and then went on vacation, and he has no intention of coming back. And he said to us that he plans on leaving the profession of architecture. And that's really the explanation that he gave us. We wish him well in whatever he chooses to do. But, we just wanted to make sure, because I was on the interview with Kevin. And even though Kevin was going to be your all's main point of contact, I would be working with Kevin, but just not on the day-to-day. My role would be to help him and support him. But obviously, with his leaving, that's changed. And I'm the vice president of our company, so I'm one of the principals. And Justin is also one of my partners, and he also works in our K-12 studio, because that's the largest portion of what we do is K-12 education projects. So what I just wanted to do was to let you know that certainly in moving forward, obviously there'd be a change because of Kevin's absence, and I would be taking on the role of the primary contact and leading the projects forward for you all, hopefully providing you move forward with us. But I know that in the interview, when we, of course, the projects that we showed you and the experience weren't Kevin, they were Sherman Carter Barnhart. They were all of us. We're a very collaborative firm. But we also made a point of making it a local contact. The fact that Kevin was from here, his family, now his son, Devin, that works for CMTA Engineers, nothing has changed there. And then, there were other folks that were on our team that were also, Garrard County natives, but I didn't really feel that was necessary to bring those folks tonight because, again, we're a larger company with a lot of experience, but what we would be changing out is the person you were comfortable with. And so what we wanted to do tonight is just answer questions that you all have about me. I mean, you all had gotten to know Kevin on a smaller project. And so, there was a level of confidence in him as he brought our firm forward. So we need to assure you that that's not going to be lost. Now, I don't live quite as close, but Justin and I both just live across the river. We both live in Jessamine County. So it is not a long, I think about 20, 25 minutes at best. And that's just to say, we still feel like we're local. You know, we're not that far away. I really do feel that we will give you the same service that Kevin was promising moving forward, and helping you all, number one, decide on your projects and, you know, how you're going to lay out, you know, prioritize those and what comes first. And so I really don't have anything other to tell you, except that we're committed to Garrard County, and certainly want to continue the relationship. So I'm just going to be as candid as I can and answer any questions that you all have about me or the farm.
Just to share kind of a little bit about our background, Kenny and myself have worked exclusively in our K-12 education studio, and me for almost 18, 19 years, and Kenny for over 30. So we have focused on K-12 education projects our entire careers. And that's something that I think we bring to your project, because we've seen a little bit of everything across the state. We've learned from all of those experiences. We've dealt with KDE and the plan reviewers on a daily basis. We deal with your plan reviewer on a daily basis, Gary Least. We have a good relationship with Gary. I actually worked with Gary in the first job that I had out of college. I worked with Gary Least in Louisville, so I'm not sure that helps necessarily, but that is to say that, you know, we have a working knowledge of how KD process works, you know, how projects like you're pursuing work, what things to look out for. We've worked with both Kenny and myself have worked with general contractors. We've also worked with any and all of the CMs that you will come across, construction managers that you will come across, and we can help kind of guide that as well. So we're here, obviously. We don't like surprises. We don't like our clients to be surprised. That's why you guys were one of the first groups that we reached out to when we learned of that.
We had 4 community meetings. We wanted to get input from different areas here in Garrard County, what the people want.
Yes.
Of course, we got our facilities plan, and so when we met with Kevin, what's it been, a month or 2 ago? He asked us to give him the big rocks, he called it.
Yeah.
Has he passed that on to you? I asked all the board members, and we're trying as best we can get everything we've done can for around the $22 million.
Right. Yeah.
Did he pass that on to you?
He did, and of course, we knew that probably the largest project is the gymnasium.
Yeah.
But then also just to touch as many of your facilities as you could, and really just be able to show the taxpayers that we're going to do as much for all of our facilities as we can. So that's kind of what he, you know, told us. I do know that, you know, since the district facility plan, KDE has just recently updated their cost per square foot, what they call their replacement cost for insurance purposes. And it's about 11% increase across the board. And so if we, you know, one of the first things is just to update the facility plan, just so you know, instead of the whatever they're having for the gymnasium, they've got listed as $5,751,000. I know that's just a placeholder because that's for a 16,000 square foot gym. And Kevin said that you all may be wanting to have a bigger capacity than that. So that square footage will probably grow. But at any rate, $276.97 is what KDE is using for just a standard model program. So that will bump the numbers up. Now, that's not saying that that's what your gym has to cost or any of the projects, but it's just a starting point. the initial BG1 or multiple BG1s, I'm knowing Gary least, he's probably going to want the projects broken down so that they can be tracked through KFix. So, you know, if you want to, even if we wanted to bid them multiple projects together, he's probably going to want separate BG1s for each of them. We can confirm that though, because the initial BG1s, that's just telling KDE, hey, we've got projects we're going to do, and we're going to do them, and we're going to fund them this way. Now, when we get further into it, details-wise change, maybe the capacity of the gym changes, we can always come back and revise those. But for KDE to really sit down and talk to us about the projects, they're going to want that initial BG1 initiated so they got something to react to. So that's really, once you get the input from your communities and you all are settled on what the projects are, then we can initiate that with KDE and really start the ball rolling. And again, it's still very fluid at that point. Nothing's cast in stone, especially when it comes to costing. I know one of the other things is that y'all were getting ready to interview construction managers, companies, and had asked for some questions, I think from Kevin about what he would ask. And we'll do the same thing. I mean, if you'd like me to go through some of the things that I would ask a construction manager, I'd be happy to. But we're kind of, I mean, we're here for you all and as much time as you want to spend asking us questions. So I don't want to dominate, you know, and go down a path that's not necessary. But I do want to make sure that when we leave here tonight, there's no questions unanswered that you all have for us.
I do have a follow-up question on Mr. Cheek's list of big rocks. When we had our community forums, the project that actually was spoken for the loudest was the soccer field track athletic complex. Was that listed on his list?
It is.
Big rock?
It is. Yeah, really, the gymnasium, and then, of course, there's multiple things at the high school, and you may or may not do all of them, but the athletic complex was certainly one of those.
She says, I think she said he was our number one priority, not the gym. The gym was the largest item per dollar.
Okay, well, if you,
I don't even think we've ever really said, if organized it.
Those were the top two.
The top two, yeah, they're the top two. But to say the gym is, I think we'll probably have enough money to do multiple.
well, I was gonna say, if you spend
It's
20
not-
million
it's
on an
not there.
athletic complex, something's wrong.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's, when you say 20 million, there is enough money then to do multiple projects.
But to think that you could build a gym for $6 million with 2,500 capacity.
Not the capacity you're talking
It's
about.
not gonna happen.
You know, we're probably more in the
Normally, I
eight range.
So that's one of the main selling points with the presentation you were here. That one of the last remarks, build you a gym for 2,500 for $6 million. Sort of doubted that, but you wait and see.
Well, and things change daily
As
too.
far as the BG1s, is there a significance between the cost as a board, the cost of the project of doing separate BG1s and doing one blanket BG1?
Cost in terms of construction
Architect
or
fees,
architect fees? It just depends on
because I'd
how.
say you're gonna be preparing them, so if you do work, you need to get paid for it.
Well, we're not gonna charge you more to do multiple BG1s. That's just
Well,
Part of
that's
the-
good. That's a perfect answer.
right.
Perfect answer.
No, and nothing has changed as far as, we're not the firm that's gonna nickel and dime you on anything. I mean, we have a very comprehensive viewpoint of our role in the projects. And, you know, we're not gonna send you a bill for food and telephone and all that kind of stuff. We know what it takes to do a project, and, you know, this is all we do.
Change the pace.
The other thing that I would mention too is even if KDE makes us separate and identify the scope for each facility under a separate BG1, we can still work with the construction manager and determine what the bid packages need to look like so that we can maximize your all's dollar and make sure that we're taking advantage of any economy of scale that we can take advantage of.
you said something about answering questions about construction managers. And I know no architect for a firm wants to really make a bunch of construction managers mad at them because they favor one over the other. So obviously they have to walk on eggshells here to some extent. But what's the real advantage to having a construction manager on projects that are mainly moving dirt? How much money can they really save you when they're moving dirt and doing?
Well, I don't think a construction manager is going to necessarily save you money in the total scope of the project. It's just a different method of delivery. In other words, the construction manager, you get to pick, just like your design team, who you want to work with and represent Garrard County. General contractor, on the other hand, is whoever has the low dollar on bid day. And while we can sit here and say, well, we don't always have to accept the low bid, it's tough not to. And it really, and when I say it's tough not to, we've had the construction industry has changed a lot over the years. And there used to be a level of goodwill that's not there anymore. And a lot of guys are bidding projects at a loss, looking for ways to make them up. And it really can. That's why it's so important that our construction documents, our drawings, which are the legal binding contract, are as close to perfect as they can be, because some of these folks are looking, they go into the project knowing they've got a loophole. And I don't, that's not always the case, but as the economy has tightened over the years, we've never come out of that mindset of, I've gotten a change order before for $86. It was a can of paint and an hour of somebody's time. And, when they're scrutinizing it that tightly, then we just have to make sure that our documents are as absolutely foolproof, in the sense that the contractors don't guess. We don't want guesswork. Now, to go back to your question about construction manager, versus general contractor, and another advantage of construction management is that in small communities, you may have some contractors, different trades that are quite capable of doing the work, but a large general contractor might not even give them a chance to. And so when a construction manager comes on board, they can look, and this is one of the questions I would ask them, is they can look at the workforce in your all's area, and if there are some folks that we could employ locally, we can make the bid packages, we can break them down so that they can be part of that. Not that you give them the job, you just give them the chance. That's what we need to do, is make sure that, these are taxpayer dollars here that are building these projects. And if there's a way that, a construction manager can break down the bid packages to give those folks a chance, that's always a good thing. One of the other things with a construction management company that we've seen over the years is you may have 10 bid packages from one construction manager, or you may have another one that says, no, we need 20. And it really is the construction manager that takes the whole project and breaks it down. The more bid packages that you have, that's more work, but that's also maybe a benefit to you for that very reason I just said. In other words, you could have a general contractor package that lumps a lot of things in, and the bigger that package is, the bigger the companies are that are going to bid it. And so I'm not saying that all construction managers are lazy, but when you start limiting your bid packages, it's less work on them, but it might not be the best thing for the community. And so we want to be careful about that. And that's one of the questions I would ask, construction manager. Now, another thing, it used to be an advantage of the construction management, and that's how they sold themselves as as a reason to use them over general contractor, and that was the tax exempt savings. That's not an issue anymore. That's off the table. Because now, as the architects, and we don't charge anything for this, but we now have the ability to break all of those out, all the materials out. And so you still get the advantage of it, but we can do that whether it's general contractor or construction management. So, that's not a real consideration anymore, but it is going to be more paperwork for your all staff. It just is by its very nature with all these multiple bid packages. So one of the other things I would ask is from the construction manager is, how does your company help Garrard County Schools administrate the extra paperwork load? And I think and you'll get different answers from different companies.
As for like
We
a
also
general,
hire somebody to do that, and you can handle it.
True, but it's still going to be, for everyone involved, there is a level of paperwork that you may not be used to with a general contractor, with a construction management.
for instance, like a general contractor, you're gonna have one contract that's between you and that one construction company. For a CM, you're gonna have multiple prime contracts. However they break those bid packages up, you're gonna have a contract between the Board of Education and that contractor for each one of those. So every time there's a change or a pay app or anything involving one of those packages, that's paperwork that has to be processed and at least roll through your all's accounting here locally with the Board of Education.
We had just had a meeting and, we got 5 responses from general or construction managers, and we were gonna set up interviews. So I think all the board is in agreement that we wanted Kevin to sit in on those interviews. And so I think it was the next day, Mr. Stoll texted and said, "Oh, you won't believe this." And so we're holding off on that. If we do stay with you all, would you or somebody else?
No, I would be your all's primary contact. I'll be doing it.
Would you sit in on those interviews? with us?
Absolutely, sure.
Sorry, somebody else had a question.
I understand.
I'd like to go back to, we were talking about the big rocks. When the last time we met and Kevin was here and we prioritized the items, we had asked him to go on and start work as quickly as he could. And so that's been a couple of weeks, probably, at least 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I've lost track of time. So what has been done between that meeting and tonight on your all's part?
Nothing that I'm aware of.
Okay.
There was a great deal of comfort in knowing that Kevin was going to be our liaison and overseeing our projects because we felt like he had some personal commitment to our district. I have 2 questions, but one is the size of your firm and how many projects do you have going on right now in progress? And then how many are you working on bidding to pick up? And so that's important to me, I guess, is to know that we've got a degree of commitment that we thought we were going to have with Kevin being here. We're going to still have that same degree of commitment to both start in an expedited manner, because I think that we've all agreed that we'd like to get this started as quickly as possible and completed as quickly as possible. And so I would just like to hear you speak to the degree of commitment that you're able to give to us with his absence now.
Sure. Well, twofold. One, to just say, we're committed. That's easy to say. We do have a lot of folks that support Justin and I, and we're supporting Kevin too, in our education studio. But I think the other thing that I said I was going to be very candid. Obviously, it's got to be on your all's mind. Well, Kevin's left. That means they're going to have to split up not just Garrard County, but his other districts he was working in. So how are they going to be able to maintain the commitment to us when they're pulled in a lot of different directions? I think that's probably as succinct as I can be
Yeah,
to say.
and that is exactly where my questions came from in terms of how many folks do you have working in your firm and how many projects are you trying to juggle?
We have 40
44 in our
44.
office, 25 that are dedicated to K-12 education projects. So of that, basically Kenny is now managing roughly half of those, and I'm managing the other half.
As far as what we decided to do, as far as who takes which districts Kevin was working in, he gets more because I'm committed to Garrard, Powell, and Pulaski. Those are the three districts that I met with their superintendents, and I will tell you that Powell County Elementary School is getting ready to go out to bid. They were working with Kevin and another project manager of ours, and she is continuing to work with them, but I would be their principal in charge of that project. The workload is much different when a project goes into construction. We have a much, there's a lot more people involved in the design phase. As far as Burnside Elementary in Pulaski County is currently on hold because they have an issue getting their property. So I can't tell you when that one will start, but it's simply not an issue at this point in time. And then you all. And so those are the three. As far as my existing workload, I have two schools under construction right now at Bardstown Elementary, it's about 70% complete, and Rich Pond Elementary in Warren County, which is about 65% complete. And we do have construction administrators that are helping and are already assigned to those projects. But again, I want to be 100% candid with you all about what my workload consists of. So when we found out from Kevin, we looked at all the projects that he had going on in different parts of the state and divided them up based on what the commitment needed to be. And because of you all and the other two, that's why I only took 3 of his districts, so that I could maintain and be committed and be able to be very candid and honest with you about the level of commitment and service that we can continue to provide.
You were asked a while ago, what you've done so far, but I remember Kevin told us that he couldn't even start a BG1 until we hired a construction manager.
That is true in the sense that there is a line item on the BG1 where the construction manager identifies his fee and the architect identifies his. It's part of the financing. So he is 100% correct in that in order to get the BG1 in place, the construction manager team needs to be identified and hired.
And that's one of the advantages of having CM is that they're another part of the team. And the earlier you can get them on board and start informing decisions that you make along the way, the better. So,
but now as far as getting the ball rolling and getting started, I mean, if y'all tell me tonight we're staying with Sherman Carter Barnhart, I'm gonna start tomorrow. I don't have to have a BG1 in place in order to let's get moving. We know we're gonna have to have that, but I'm not gonna sit back and go, well, I can't devote any time to Garrett County until the BG1 has been approved by KDE. We're not those architects.
and we're not going to sit back and wait for KDE to process our contract or anything like that. If you guys say move, we'll move, and we'll move as fast or as slow as you guys need us to work.
I guess I was thinking, and you said you would start tomorrow, so what would be the first thing you would do tomorrow? We give you the go ahead tonight.
Well, I think the first thing to do is to all agree on what the big rocks are, and then let's put the new KDE numbers to that, and just see what let's see what adds up to 20 million. Let's see how many buildings we can touch and prioritize, and then if we're all on agreement with that, then if the athletic complex is the very first one, then we want to start looking at, we can get into the early design. I mean, there's nothing to stop us from going ahead and looking at concepts and start that process. Because again, the whole design process is fluid. I mean, from the beginning, when we're really just looking at big picture ideas, then as it progresses and we work with you all and make decisions, the more detailed it gets until we finally are at a point where we say, this is it, this is what we're doing. And then we roll into the construction documents that become the basis of the contract and all. So there's a lot of steps in design, but the idea is to start big picture and then make all the small decisions till we're all in agreement that this is it.
So as of right now, your company doesn't really have a vision for what you could do with the information you receive as far as the big rocks. I'm new on this end of interviewing architects, and some did present a vision that they had in mind. And if I'm not mistaken, your all's presentation, you had design pictures of what you had done in other districts,
Correct.
which is wonderful. And you had a pie chart that had different percentages of how to use the funding, but you really didn't present any kind of vision that you saw could be actually used for our projects. And so I guess I was sort of hoping tonight you could share a little bit of a vision that you're seeing with the possible, since you had the pie chart, you had an idea of how much money could be spent on each of those and would include the renovations, what you were thinking, how that money could have been spent and how it could look. So none of that's happened so far.
No, there's been nothing developed design-wise at this point. And one of the, whenever we go into an interview situation, we have to make a decision about whether or not we're going to try to sell our vision that you all have had no part of and hope that it sticks, hope that we show you some fancy pictures that really appeal to you, or we go in and sell our process and our experience and recognize and show you, unique things that we've done in other districts and make the promise that, we're going to be committed to making yours as unique and specific for Garrard County, because we don't know going into an interview, even though Kevin had worked with you all on a small project, we don't think we know what you want going in until we've had enough time to really understand what the design issues are. I know that there's a potential issue for sinkholes and in the location that you're looking at for either the athletic or the gym, and there's ways around that. So there's going to be options about specific location. There's going to be discussion about what the capacities are, even in the athletic complex. Are we going to try to host regional tournaments in ways? Or is our spectator seating going to be, for the student body, or is it going to be for larger? And that's going to all impact the budget. So all those things we really are going to bring to the table and discuss with you all. Again, I'm not going to, you'd be hiring us for our expertise, obviously. If I was needing advice about how to be a superintendent, I'd be asking him. But I'm not going to make decisions for you, but I'm going to give you good information so that the decisions we make together are the right decisions for Garrard County. Because you all are unique. You're not going to do an athletic complex like the one, we just completed at Warren Central High School. It's not going to be the same. But through our multiple experiences working, we know a lot of the right questions to ask, so that at the end of the day, what we come together with is the perfect solution for you all. So that was the reason why we didn't come with, a vision. We didn't feel that it was the right time, the appropriate time. There are situations where we'll be asked specifically in an interview to, here's the criteria. We want you to best answer the design problem we have. But since this was more open-ended about, hiring the right firm to work with you guys and girls, I'm sorry, but to work with you folks, we just felt like we wanted to present what we could and bring to the table, and hopefully be the right combination, the right team.
Coach, I haven't heard from you.
Y'all jumped in ahead of me.
I'm sorry.
But rightfully so, because everything y'all asked is so valuable. You've got to understand that our confidence has been shaken.
I fully
You know,
understand that.
And be honest with you, when I listened to the interview and everything, I voted because of the fact that Kevin was near and he sold me, so to speak. So now I've got to realign my thought process. Not that I don't have confidence in you at all, because you are a very reputable organization. And I'll just touch on a few little things here, and then may or may not answer. When we talk about the athletic complex, which we have for the band, the track, and so forth, and there's a few more people voted for that because, bless his heart, the band director did a good job getting his people down there in Riverdale, and that's great, and I got a grandson in the band. I want it to be the very best it very possibly can be. So that's not an issue of debate, because we should be able to build both the gym and that athletic complex. That should happen.
I would absolutely.
Secondly, from our standpoint, I'm more of a visual person. I'd like to see an example of what you would build for us a gym. Like for instance, we would like to, I think we're expressed anywhere from a 3,000, 3,500 seat gym. What's that going to look like? What's it going to cost us? We've talked about a track around there. And from you all, maybe you all can, come up with examples of that, and that would help me in my visualization. A 1,500 seat gym is not worth building. It doesn't do what we want to do. It can't house our graduation. It may or may not touch on capacity for certain other things, but it limits anything we can do outside of Garrard County. If we want to host a region or something, it places immediate limitations on us. So I don't want to look at the little picture first. I want to look at what we can actually do and see if we can sell the state on that, because I think that's important. We have our middle school gym right now seats approximately 2,300, and when we have graduation, we got standing room only.
Right.
So that in itself becomes a multi-purpose facility, and we're looking at developing something that not only takes care of that, but has other factions that we can bring the community in to participate in. Another question I had, from the time we hire a construction manager, if you're retained, how quick are you all going to get together, get started, and get the ball rolling? I mean, is there something in there? Is that not almost immediate?
Well, I think once the whole team's in place, I'd like to have a kickoff meeting with your all's representatives and the whole team and just lay out how the project's going to go, the time frame. We'll put together a schedule and just hit the ground running as far as that goes. Now, the CM's role in early design is a bit different, but it's valuable because they can be a very good sounding board for value engineering. And by that, I mean, as we start to develop the design, they can have input and bring to the table. And I'll just use an example right now. Powell County, the elementary school that's getting ready to go out to bid, the price of steel changed so much from the early design concept that about midway through design, the construction manager said, we're going to have a real issue here if we don't change the roof structure of the building. And so they recommended us go to hollow core planks because not only were they cheaper, they're readily available. There's places right now where there is 3 to 4 months lead time just to even get the steel produced, much less get it to the site. So we made that change based on the construction manager's recommendation. And so there's value in having them on board during design. And then they can also put a paper to pencil a little bit along the way as we go, so that we're not making design decisions that are then going to blow our budget by the time we go out to bid. So it's really important that they're involved early on, and I applaud you for wanting to get them on the team now. Let's just say you decided that you didn't want to make up your mind about construction manager until later. You could submit a BG1. It wouldn't have the construction manager on there, but you'd have to go back and amend it at the point you brought them on board. But then you've lost some of the value of having them involved during the early design. And then also they get a good idea during design about how the project, you know, if a project, some of your addition renovations, and I know we're talking big rock picture, but I need to also think of all of them too, is how the phases work. You know, depending on how you phase a project can make a big difference in the ultimate cost of it as well. And at the end of the day, you all don't have places to move kids to. You don't have any vacant buildings sitting around. So school has to be maintained no matter whether you're building a new gymnasium on site. We need to protect the kids from that and the teachers. But any of addition renovation that's going on, we also have to be cognizant of the fact that you still have to have school. That's your number one priority, is educating kids. So we have to make sure that that can maintain and be a safe environment for them as we go. And the construction manager can be part of those discussions and help lay out that task. And it also becomes important for each bid package to understand what their responsibility is in an overall project like that. So it can be really important.
One of the things that we talked about vision, you know. So I could be wrong, because I'm out of my league here in certain things. That's why we need the valuable expertise that your all's company can afford. But I believe that what I would like to see is that you implement our vision. And then if our vision is too expensive, then you show us where we need to tweak it. And I think we are representative of the vision of Garrett County. And so that's what I'd like to see happen.
If we were moving forward and our first meeting, from hearing what I hear tonight, I would bring you ideas of different kinds of gyms that we've done, and really, rather than say, here's what I think you need, let's look at all the options. Let's look at things that we've done differently, whether it's the walking track around or just to show you different people's visions. You know, what does the outside look like? Is it very traditional with brick, or is it more contemporary with glass and metal panels? You know, for a gymnasium, it's natural light's not completely necessary, but it is a good thing to do. But in a gym, you can't deal with glare, so you have to be careful about where you put that natural light. And that has a different look too, you know, on the outside of the building. And then, you know, as what kind of spaces are we going to have for spectators? You know, how big is that lobby, that gathering space going to be? Are we going to try to, you know, close that in to maximize our seating? I think there's going to need to be a balance, because you don't want backup crowd control around concessions and restrooms. You know, so there's a lot of things to consider. We just finished Hart County High School. That project has a very large gymnasium in it. And so that was one of the things to discuss, was where are the concessions and restrooms, and how big does that entrance lobby really need to be, you know, compared to the rest of the school. And so Warren Central's another large one. Taylor County High School is a couple years old now. I think that was 3,000 seats down there. So we have a lot of experience that, you know, I want to share with you, and just I like this, but I don't like this. And we can really start to, you know, come up with some ideas, some do's and don'ts, if you will, and then just come up with a unique plan that's based on what your all's vision is. You know, we're a sounding board, and we'll implement, you know, we'll show you what those ideas of vision mean in the ultimate, plan. And in the early stages, we really want to look at a lot of different options to make sure that we're making the right decision. And one of the things that we offer, and I think we talked about it briefly, probably in the interview, is we build everything in a virtual reality model so that you're not looking at a floor plan and trying to envision what it's like to sit in the bleacher from this corner and what you can see on the floor. We'll be able to do that. And that's really, I think, critical to making sure that the vision is exactly what you intended. And we really can. It's photo real. We'll put, you wear goggles and you literally are inside the building.
It'll even give you the illusion of, if you're scared of heights, you'll get that sensation.
You might have to hold on to the table while you're doing it. But it's a tool that we use that, I don't understand all the technology, but we have folks that do it every day, and they'll take that design and they'll put it in that virtual reality program, and you all will think you're there. And it's so important to be able to see that early on, and not wait until you have to see it come up in reality.
Coach, I don't want to cut you off, but while we're on the gym, if you don't care, what were the student populations of Warren County and the other one that you mentioned?
Hart, Taylor.
Hart County was actually a smaller population. It was only a 750
Okay,
student.
we're
high
800
school.
and they built a larger gym?
Well,
They did, but there was a catch.
we
They-
found a way to
Okay, that's
work
where I'm
within the
going.
system.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
So ours is 16,000 square feet. Was that about 1,600 capacity? Somewhere in that neighborhood?
Yeah,
Well,
so the 16,000 square feet that they list on paper, that includes all the support facilities and everything. So that's not just the gymnasium proper,
Okay,
that's locker rooms, support restrooms, lobby.
and so we're talking 3,000 to 3,500. Will you all go with us to Frankfurt to help sell KDE on allowing us to build that 3,500 square foot?
Absolutely.
I did some research and I did learn, even if they turn us down, if we come back and say, well, would you let us have 20% more than, have you ever heard of that?
It's 125% gross area, and the way it works is whatever the total square footage is of your high school now, there's a model program that kind of goes along with the necessities for the school. But then you have to add circulation, how efficient were your corridors? Because what they say at the end of the day is, now that you want to add a gym or anything, you can do that, and you can do it up to 125% of the model program. And so if your existing school is an efficient building and it doesn't have a lot of wasted space, then that's going to give you the ability to build more gymnasium. It really becomes a math problem. Now, the reason I say that is because when you use restricted money, KDE gets to control the math. If you kick in other monies, they allow a percentage of the project. They'll say, well, you want to build a gym this big, we'll fund 75% of it, then you got to come up with the other 25. We don't want that. We want them to agree to 100% of it with restricted funds, because that's your ability to bond. So it is going to be a sell job, but it's also going to be based on math. And I think that we can look at that and maximize where your program area is spent. So if we put it in the spectator seating, I think there's some flexibility.
Did I also read that there's flexibility if we build classrooms into that space? So if, for example, under the bleachers, you've got batting cages or learning, there's some flexibility in how that space is designed and structured and what you can do inside that space. So if you incorporate a mobile classroom in it or creative classrooms in it or something, then that changes the criteria for the size that KDE will approve.
Correct.
Did I
So,
misunderstand or is
no, I
that?
think the real challenge is to think, be creative
Yeah.
in how we did, like the Hart County job that you questioned. Hart County had an existing large capacity gym. What's it, see, 2,500?
No, it was 35.
3,500? Okay, but a very small student population. What we figured out is if we saved a couple exterior walls, we could reuse that space and KD would allow that. If we tore those extra walls down, they were gonna enforce the actual requirements
They'd had a
from the model
750
program.
capacity gym.
In Owensboro, several years ago, we did a new spectator gym for them. We actually used a area that was up on the elevated walking track that was designated as wellness
Yeah,
space, but it also doubled for things like hospitality space when you're hosting a regional tournament or something like that. So there's that flexibility to, yeah, assign it a purpose for 90% of the time. But then when you need space like that, you've got it for specific uses that are kind of extracurricular
like a
activities.
regional tournament.
Yeah.
Or
And
our
it's,
graduation.
That's right.
and that falls under what's called the SBDM allowance, the site-based decision-making allowance. And that is that flexible space that can be assigned. And a lot of times it's not really a trick, but it's a way to satisfy both, you know, and sometimes it's calling a space this because KD says you have to have this program space, but we know it's going to be designed because it's got another purpose as well. And that's just a smart way to design so that you get the most flexible space and we make this meet your all's needs and get that larger space. And so there's a lot of ways that we can do that, but we absolutely would go to KDE and help sell the project in whatever phase we're in. You know, we definitely are your partner in that, and I wouldn't want you to go alone because I know Greg Dunbar and I know Gary Least, and they're going to ask questions that only we have the answer to. You know, and so we want to be part of that, and they will ask questions.
Our fiscal agent said they would go with us too.
That's always good too, because they can, when KDE starts talking about funding sources and restricted funds, and they're really good to be able to talk specifically about Garrard County. And so that would be a benefit as well.
And the other thing, we talked a little bit about our experience of dealing with projects across the state. The other thing that is valuable for us and as a result for you is that we've seen them establish precedents in other districts. So we can very easily point to, sometimes they'll say, well, you got to take care of all the academic needs on this campus before we'll allow you to take care of the athletic needs. Well, we've seen them not be the case on projects, and we're able to remind them of that and figure out a way to make it work.
And I may be the only one on the board that has pushed for a new bus garage. But I would just like, if you could, even though it's down at the bottom of our rocks, big rocks, to watch, keep an eye out if something like that could be squeezed in. That's me. I'm speaking.
We just finished a bus garage for Spencer County, and it's probably about the same size. And about $2 million is probably might be able to do a little bit less, but not much. But that's certainly something. Bus garage is a little bit different construction type than others. It's probably going to be a pre-engineered metal building more than likely because it's just a more economical way, because bus garage is going to be a box, a rectangle. We're not going for an architectural award for its functionality, for the bus garage. And so we certainly can look at that. I think in all of your rocks, I think, the early on idea is to let's identify the priority list, and let's see what we can do early on that we think is going to add up to 20 million, if that's the number. And then we really try to stick to that target. And if scope changes, that obviously can change some things, but we don't want to start with a wish list that we can't afford at the end. It needs to be accurate.
So to that point, if it's okay if I ask a couple
Sure,
of questions
please.
around this. One of them would be, if I recall correctly, you will correct me if I'm wrong. One of the things I think that we had asked Kevin to do was to take those big rocks and go ahead and start giving us the idea of what a cost could be. Now, I know in that time frame, we've had this transition to the new insurance numbers and square footage costs. How quickly could you all take a look at that, create a rough guess so that they could actually put together a package of what this would look like? Because one of the things, if you'll recall, when we interviewed the architects, we said, give us the things that are big projects and how much they might cost, the things that are in the middle, and then some things that are smaller, so that there's the selection process. So to get to the point of actually making a decision about the way to go, how long would it take Sherman Carter Barnhart to put together some numbers that said, rough guess, nobody holding you to anything, it would cost roughly this amount to do this project, this amount to do this project, this amount to do this project. And here are 6 different ways you could put those together to come up with a variety of things that the board could do.
Mhm.
So to accomplish that, what kind of time frame do you think you all have to have?
Well, I mean, we have a starting point here.
Right.
So what we would do is look at, because again, this is a standardized form for ADE's purposes. So we would want to take a little bit closer look at each of those, because I suspect that some of them may not cost as much as what we have here, and some may cost a little more. So time frame wise, I don't see why we couldn't get back together in a week. We could have that, and in variations of. I just need a little bit of time to analyze it and see where we think bids are coming in right now.
So could you analyze that from the standpoint of what it might cost if we got what we were looking for in the gym? Could you estimate what it might be if we were working with that athletic complex and we were wanting to think about it as how you host a regional track event there to make sure that we have the seating that would be necessary? Again, not suggesting that that's the place that we can ultimately end, but to give that bigger picture so that you're not getting, as Mr. McCreary was talking about earlier, an underestimate, only to be shocked that when we got further into it, we can't even get close to what we're thinking about.
Absolutely, because one of the first things to do is I need to look at this 16,000 square feet for the gym, knowing that that's just a model program for 1,000 students. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at several of our larger gymnasiums that we've done that were 3,000, 3,500, and get a more realistic square foot of that space. And then I can apply some dollars. So we're closer, because again, we want to be accurate with your all's vision, and then look at how that vision can be appropriated. You know, what's the combination of projects? So yes, definitely we would do that and look at those things that are different than what's in the district facility plan.
If you don't care, would you tell the board what it would look like for you all to be involved in the interview process for the construction manager? Because I think from what I remember Kevin saying about how he would plan to be connected, I could have told them this is what Kevin is, how he's going to participate. How do you see your participation in that? Are you the questioner? Are you a guy sitting behind saying you may want to ask one more question around this way? Are you the advisor after they've left? What's your role?
Basically, and I can just tell you how it's worked previously for me and the clients I've been involved in, is that prior to the interviews, we would prepare a list of questions that we think are appropriate just based on our experience, with CMs. I have not been the main questioner before. I have been on the sideline, if you will, listening to the interviews. And then after the interviews are over, sit in on the discussions, and anything that you may have, did you pick up on this, or what was your insight here, and just be a resource for you in evaluating the firms that you're interviewing. That's how it's worked for me, personally, before.
When Kevin was here the last time, he mentioned to the board how much money they needed to set aside as soft costs. So he gave us a figure, and I'm not trying to trap anybody here, just wondering if that's a standard number. So what does soft cost mean, and what is that estimate from your way of thinking? For
Okay.
a project that was a $20 million project, all things encompassed.
Yeah, it can vary a little bit, but around 18% is a good medium. And the reason sometimes it varies a little bit is just because is there going to be purchased property? Or are you rolling in any property that you have purchased? That can cause the soft cost to vary somewhat. It's everything that it takes beyond the construction bids. So it's the fiscal agent fee, the architect's fee, the construction manager's fee, geotech information. Because of the sinkholes, we probably want to do resistivity testing. So the geotech numbers are going to be a little bit higher. It even breaks down not only the technology, the furnishings for the project, based on which ones they are, of course, but it also can even get broken down as much as the printing cost, so that all of the costs that are necessary to build the project beyond the construction bids, that is your soft cost. And I've seen it as high as 20. And as low as 14 or 15, but around 18 is probably a good point to use.
You talked about your 3D imaging. Is it possible for them to see that from another project, or do they have to wait until the project is actually put together here?
The only thing, well, if you want to do it from the comfort of your computer, I can give you links. Now, you won't be wearing goggles, but you can walk through the project, and that's a very simple way of doing it. If you want to fully experience the project with the headset and the goggles, we could bring that down to you and meet again and do that. But if you want to so it's twofold. It just depends on how much time and how much involvement. I'm good either way. It's really fun to do, but again, if you just want to see kind of the end result of that, I can give you links to several projects, and you can toggle and you can walk through the building.
So just really thinking about it from the perspective that you were talking about it, and the idea that you were talking about, Ms. Davis, the idea of vision, right? And how you think about that, and looking at it in a two-dimensional idea is one thing, to get an idea of what this would really look like if we did this and this and this. So I guess what I was asking, was it proprietary in any fashion with the other projects? And it sounds like you're saying, no, we could take a look at somebody else's project and how that laid out.
Absolutely.
And maybe somebody else's, and we can think about what that looks like put together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I can, as much time as you want to spend on it, we can set it up, and everybody can take a turn wearing the goggles and walk through the facility.
Because what we pride ourselves on at the end of the day is, when you guys walk into the facility, we want you to say, this is exactly what we expected. We don't want you to walk in and say, but I didn't expect it to look like that. We want you to be able to say, hey, this is what we all imagined that it would look like, and what you guys showed us when we did that virtual walkthrough.
Because really, a pretty picture at the end of the design phase, it'll show you what the building's going to look like, but you didn't have any input into those decisions to arrive at this is the perfect solution. So it's not near as valuable, at least in my mind, as having early on in design. You all get to see those decisions and how it manifests into what the building looks like. We've even had chief of police, the fire department come in and put the goggles on and walk through the buildings virtually and talk about blind spots and can we move this countertop because I'd like to see around this corner. And so it's very beneficial as far as letting everyone that might have a input in the building.
I mean, how many gyms in the 12th region have you been in where they've got mezzanine seating, but you can't use the first 3 or 4 rows because you can't see over the rail? I mean, it's a perfect example of that tool that we can all use to really explore those types of issues.
one of the things that I think you heard a little bit ago is, at no fault of your all's, this was kind of a punch in the gut because there was an expectation. This is not a fair question, and I know that. So
It's
feel
okay.
free to say, that's not a fair question. How do you reestablish that idea of, I would say, for lack of a better word, trust?
Mhm.
Because there've been conversation about, this is what my truck looks like. I'm ready to meet you on Saturday and walk projects, all of those kinds of things. And I'm not saying you need to show us the color of your truck, or I'm not saying you need to necessarily do a Saturday thing, but to regain the trust of this board so that they are confident that the decisions that they make can be carried out. What do you offer to them in a, I guess, a concrete fashion that says, these are things that we could do? And I'm not saying that you're, again, I'm not trying to lead you down a path. I'm just saying, I think that when trust has been shaken, to get to that, some of those next phases, you've got to try to rebuild that in some fashion. So in the week that you've had to think about this transition, have you thought about things that can be beneficial in helping re-galvanize that if the board decides that they want to stay with you?
Well, yes, we have thought about that. And, coming into a situation where you all hired us, and part of that reason was based on the trust that you had established and Kevin had established with you, and the promises that, he made about the attention he was going to give Garrard County school projects. So from my perspective, to step into the lead role for Garrard County Schools from Sherman Carter Barnhart, I'm gonna make daggone sure that I exceed those expectations. It's really a simple, I know that if you all choose to continue on with us, there is a leap of faith that you didn't really need because you had established that with Kevin. So I take it extremely personal, in a good way, in that I want to make very sure that not only at the end of this, I want you to be able to say, you know what? We made the right decision. He's not Kevin, but we don't care. That's really, at the end of the day, I'm just going to go above and beyond what I would do anywhere to see that, you all made the right, to prove that you all made the right decision.
And the other thing that I would say too is we can sit here and we can promise you guys whatever you want to hear, But the other thing that we would offer is if there are certain things that you expect from us and that Kevin had promised and that you had just expected from your past relationship with Kevin and the assurances that he'd given you, let's make those concrete. We'll write them right into our contract to give you guys concrete assurance that, we're going to do what we say we're going to do. Obviously we use the KDE standard contracts, but there are Chapter 12 provisions that we can make some modifications to that and write in things that we agree upon to kind of set your mind at ease and make sure that, like I said, it's not a promise that we're making. We have a contractual obligation to those things.
I think Justin makes a point. I was a little more emotional about, stepping into Kevin's shoes, but okay, 25 years ago, I was a green project manager. Kevin was my green draftsman. So we came up together and, so there are things we do differently. I'm not going to sit here and say, I'm the same person, because I'm not. But I feel very confident that I'm going to bring a perspective to the table that maybe Kevin wasn't going to. And then, as Justin said, we'll back up what I'm telling you with a contractual obligation. I think that's the best we can offer you is to assure you that we take this unfortunate happening very, very serious for both us and you all. And, you know, we're gonna get through this and move on, but we want to make sure that, that your all's decision to stick with us was the right one.
Well, I certainly hope you understand our position. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you coming tonight to sit down with us and answer, be candid like you have been and answer all the questions we've got.
We don't take lightly a $20 million commitment to help you wisely spend taxpayer money. You know, we realize that your all's reputations and your all's, you know, you have community members that you represent, and we want you all to be shining stars at the end of the day about the decisions you've made and what it means for the students and the staff and your communities here. So we're very committed to that and understand that, you know, you all are making a very big decision. And I don't want to treat it any differently than what it is.
Yeah, you know, our firm is some 40 years old, and we're obviously in the architecture profession and the, you know, service industry. But at the end of the day, we're in the relationship business. We understand that we've kind of taken a lick or two here because we've lost the link between us and you. But at the end of the day, our reputation's on the line too, because, you know, we're in the relationship business. We're not in this for this project, you know, whether it's a gym or an athletic project or whatever. We're in this for the long-term relationship. And we understand that we've got to reestablish that with you guys, and that's why you're a priority for us.
All right, well, I don't know if we're ready to make a decision tonight or not, but I think we need to mull this over a little bit. But as soon as we do make a decision, we'll get in touch with you, and if it's to go, then you told us in a week, right?
Correct.
You'll have something to show us.
Yeah. Now maybe if I can still meet that, if I've got 4 or 5 days and not all 7, but if you come to me next Friday, it'll probably take a little longer.
No, we'll let you know as soon as we make a decision, and we'll count it 7 days from there.
Well, we appreciate y'all taking the time out this evening. I fully expected you all to want to sit down with us just because of the nature of you know, the situation and Kevin's departure. So I just want to make sure that at the end of the day, we've been as honest and as we know how to be. And I also wanted you to know a little bit about who I was too. So I know you all have, I got 3 kids, by the way, but they're 38, 28, and 14. So, so we've had a child about every decade. But if you want to know anything more personal about me, I told you I live across the river in Jessamine County, and not that far away. But
I live just across the river in northern Garrard County.
oh, okay, yeah, it kind of snakes around.
I'm closer to Nicholasville than I am Lancaster.
Is that right? But Justin said it very, you know, we are in a business, but we're also, it's about building relationships. And I have friends all over the state from, you know, having projects, and I'm just extremely blessed to have been involved in projects in Paducah and know that I have friends there. You know, if I'm going to Disney World, I'm going to call Steve Shelby in McCracken County, and we're going to talk about where the best places to eat after hours are in Disney, because he goes there about 6 times a year. And I think that it's those kind of things that make what we do really worthwhile. And so it makes a difference in how we go about enjoying what we do. You know, if I didn't enjoy this profession and building relationships, I wouldn't be in it. You know, it's what gets me up every day. So That's important.
Well, I just want to thank you also for coming in. Justin, I hope you don't go away feeling too many punches and beat up too bad. Because that was not our intent at all.
No, he was talking about
Punches.
Kevin punching us if
Yeah,
I leave,
that's
so.
right. Yeah, that I can understand. I
That's-
don't, I hope you're not leaving thinking that we.
No,
yeah,
not at all.
so,
And honestly,
um,
if you guys hadn't done this, I would have questioned, but we understand exactly why you guys are doing this, and we fully
Well,
expected it.
And I'll tell you this, I called every one of the board members individually. And every one of them is shocked and disappointed and hurt, that frustrated that we were. I think every one of the board members told me, said, well, we need to give Sherman Barnhart a shot.
Yeah.
We need to sit down with it, we need to talk this over, not make any decision until after we talk with you all. I appreciate that and all of them. I
Oh,
do so much appreciate you all coming and
Yes.
sharing with us.
Well, there's only one thing, in my opinion, worse that could have happened, is that we were under contract and this happened. Because then I feel like y'all were, forced into a situation that maybe wasn't in your best interest. So the fact that we have not established a contract yet, we're having this conversation, I think it is a very positive thing.
Thank you.
So you all as a board know, just want to make sure the public knows this too. They responded in a matter of moments. So
Yes.
when we decided to have this, talked with Dr. Browning, and he said he had spoken with all of you, and that yes, we wanted to do this. I was in contact with SCB in a matter of minutes and had an answer from them immediately. So we appreciate you all being quick and willing to have and set on a moment's notice.
Thank you so much. And thank you for answering the questions that we threw at you tonight. And we appreciate your candid answers.
You're welcome. And again, we're just appreciative that you took the time to want to sit down with us. So,
Thank you.
We're good.
We appreciate it.
all right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
You have a nice time.
Richard, I was gonna suggest the same thing.
We're thinking alike.
So we'll be right back. We're gonna take a short break.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Folks, y'all having a good evening.
Thank
What's
you.
left of it, so.
Thank you.
You be safe.
Yes.
Thanks.
Here, We were having sound problems. That's
because
Yeah.
the old horses.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience, those of you who joined us on Facebook Live or YouTube. And we've just finished interviewing Sherman Carter Barnhart, and probably heard a lot of her discussion. Right now, I'd like to hear back from each of you, and you would let us know what your thoughts are. Do you want to stay with Sherman Carter Barnhart, or do you want to look somewhere else?
Somebody's got to start this.
I can start a conversation and I'm not saying yea or nay. I'm just gonna point out, they came to us, they answered our questions very candidly. They seem to have a really good understanding of the situation. I really like the fact that they're relational, the relationships, and they're relational with us and their projects. They want to build relationships. That's very important in anything we do, I think. I think they have experience to offer, they care. So I think those are some of the positives. Some of the concerns that I had goes back to the question I asked. I really thought that something would have begun and there would have been something to have shown us tonight that either Kevin had started or that maybe one of them had picked up. I also thought when I asked about the vision, if they had given this some thought about how they would proceed. It just seems that we're sort of at a standstill. They really have not looked into the project.
So, do I hear you saying that?
You know, I'm not saying yea or nay. All
I
I'm doing is
know.
putting some things on the table. There were
Okay.
positives and there were negatives.
So you weren't particularly happy with?
I'm not
Nothing
completely
being done.
sold and I'm not completely against. I think they're very workable. I think they're gonna work really well with us. Again, talked about Seacoast and not really having researched that and some of my presentations. Some of the other companies were able to speak to the needs and the problems that we might encounter. And they had done research on us and our needs. And I'm not sure that at this point has, because even on the day that they did the interview, they really didn't give us specific information except how it showed the percentages.
Okay.
Well, I was, their presentation or their explanation was about what I expected. I think the biggest selling point and the reason they got it was Kevin. I think they lost a whole lot of what we were looking for and the reason they were selected. They've lost. They didn't present us a plan. We asked for things. Superintendent Stoll we asked for them specifically in the package, and they alluded to that. And they alluded that they didn't give us what we asked for when they made their presentation. And haven't started on giving us what we asked for. And I was disappointed in that. And I was, as David said, I was disappointed with the fact that they hadn't started anything. So, from one point of view, that to me that was bad. The other point of view, if they haven't done a whole lot, if we do decide to change, it won't cost a whole lot. And it was a close call when we made the selection. And I think there were a couple of things that led to the decision we made. And we had two top prospects. And I don't think we'll miss a step considering we haven't really gone anywhere. I don't think if we do change, we won't miss a step. Because everything they said they could do, we pretty much heard before that the other architects could do the same thing. So I've been to Disney World, I've seen virtual reality. It's a nice little trick, but if that's the only selling point, it doesn't really help me a whole lot. As to use that as a reason to keep them or not. I just really wasn't, they didn't win me over as far as being impressed over the loss of Kevin. That's a lot of loss to be have, and I would like to take them at their word. What this, and I truthfully believe they're telling what they would like to do, but whether we could actually do it, I don't know. Just have some doubts.
Well, I mean, for me, I feel like we made a commitment, and so the commitment that we made was not to Kevin, it was to Sherman Carter Barnhart. And so while it is a tremendous loss to both us and to Sherman Carter Barnhart that Kevin is no longer a part of their company, we did make that commitment on more than the fact that Kevin was their employee. And so we did go back and forth between two companies, and we really had what I thought was thorough and deep discussion about the strengths and the weaknesses of the two companies that we identified as the top two. And it did feel to me like we were making our selection based on the fact that Kevin would be our principal lead. And I had some reservations at that time, but that is the decision that we made. And so I don't feel like Sherman Carter Barnhart had any control over Kevin leaving their company. And so for me, I just feel like we made a commitment and we gave them our word. And so to me, that means something. But at the same time, I am remembering the very deep discussion we had about the value of having Kevin. And now we've lost that. And so that makes it a very difficult decision for us tonight. But I am committed to the decision that we made to Sherman Carter Barnhart and not to Kevin.
So you'd like to stay with Sherman Carter Barnhart?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just giving you my ideas.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Coach?
Mixed emotions. I think we've all got that right now. These two gentlemen came in been backed up and deep in their own territory and had a long way to go for first down. You know, and think about some of the things that we've said. For instance, you know, we all thought they may be further along. But that may not be their fault because of the fact that they assumed that he may be progressing, and all of a sudden he throws a wrinkle in the picture here at this particular point. And I'm not looking for an excuse for them not to be that far along, but in its own way, if there's a justification, they were assuming he was taken care of. He did have a good point of writing it down in concrete, promises of anything that Kevin had promised to us. Do I think this makes them a third-rate company? Absolutely not. If they weren't a reputable company and broad-based and had a good support system and a good interior organization, they wouldn't have all the projects they had. But it's one of those things too that it just leaves a big question mark. A thing that I thought about is, what if we say, we'd like one more meeting with you and you bring to the table the things we ask you to bring to the table and see if that influences us in any way, kind of like a second shot. But I know that the person that's in here that's dealt with it the most firsthand is Mr. Stoll, and I know he's, after you say, I'd like to hear what you had to say, because you got some good words of wisdom too, and had some great questions, as did everybody here. I just want to hear what everybody says before I make a decision.
Okay, well, I came into it, I was, like I told them, frustrated, angry, disappointed. And I would come into this meeting thinking, I think we need to look at another firm. But after listening to them, I was impressed. I'm not impressed with the fact that nothing has been done. I would have hoped to, like Ms. Davis said, and some reason said, I'd like to see something. But Dr. Lamb said, we did make a commitment to them. We've not signed the contract. Nothing's been set in stone, and they even admitted that during our meeting with them tonight. Do I hear you all saying you're not ready to make a decision tonight?
Well, right now, before we decide on that, I'd like to listen to what Mr. Stoll has
Oh,
to
that's
say.
fine, sure.
So when I go back and look at some of the things that I heard from them tonight, we could easily attach it to something that Mr. Hurt just said. So they indicated that within a week's time, they could tell you some things like what a cost would be, how you all could make a decision about pulling things together to create the overall look. And they can do that with the projection of the larger facilities, not adhering to what a BG1 might look like, but to what you all may want to see. We have, just by default, on next Thursday's board meeting, an update from Sherman Carter Barnard. So it was on my agenda for next week prior to us having the challenges that we face. So you could easily contact them and say, next Thursday night, we have a board meeting. We'd like you to be here. When you're here, what we'd like to have from you is, these are the costs. These are the different ways these could be packaged to do what that looks like. Here's an example of something, maybe a very small example, but here's an example of what this could look like, and what we think we could do. And from that perspective, I think what you would be doing is creating a week that may or may not kill us in any way in this process to do what you had suggested, which is to take a look at what could they do. I'm going to tell you that I would have been really surprised if they walked in with something tonight, because they didn't just lose Kevin connected to us. They lost him connected to all of these other projects as well. So they've been trying to figure some of that out. And as you heard, one of them is getting ready to go to bid. And so I would hope that if that had happened with us, if we were about to go to bid, that we would have been their priority, right? We're a hope for them. These are other people that they already have under contract, that they're all ready to move with. And I'm not saying that from the standpoint of I'm convinced that they're the choice for you. But during that time, I could also investigate whether there's an interest from anyone else if you made a decision not to go with them. Because one of the things that I would have cautioned you on tonight was not to make a decision to say no to them without knowing a potential direction that you would go beyond that. And as much as you may feel like that there's somebody who would say yes, we don't know what projects they've had describing. And then I could do a little investigation for you to see what we could find out about where somebody else might lie. And then if they came back to you next week and gave you nothing that enticed you to saying this is a good way to go, then you're making a decision not based on words anymore, but based on a product, something that they've provided you. And I think you could make a clearer decision based on a product than you can just conversations. They made the same point this afternoon or this evening. They can sit there and tell you whatever, right? It's like any interview. You might be able to get your way through an interview. That doesn't necessarily mean that's how you pull everything off. Your point's very well taken, Dr. Lamb, that a commitment was made, and what you're doing is extending that opportunity to give them a chance to give you a better vision. They answered all of your questions. They didn't deflect, and I think that's got to be a tough spot to be sitting tonight, right? Because they know the question. My last question to them about being unfair, about it being an unfair question, is the tough question. How do you rebuild trust? And that's what we're asking them to do. So that could be an avenue for them to do that. I think one of the things that I appreciated tonight was the soft cost was less than what we heard previously. I'm sure you all caught that, because when you were told the soft cost previously, it was 20%. No suggestion of flexing. Their immediate conversation was 18. So that's already a 2% plus. And if they could bring it down some more, they've offered to put things in the contract that would have just been verbal previously. I think that's a plus from them. They're still willing to participate with you in the interview process, and kind of similar to what Kevin said. So they didn't do anything tonight that led me to believe you should run away from them just yet, but I'm not sure they did anything tonight that said run to them. So I think you all saying you're not saying yes or no is probably really good. So if you were interested, we could do exactly what I've proposed, or we can alter that in any way if you'd rather do something different. So
The only caveat to your suggestion, Mr. Stowe, is my understanding was, they said if we chose them, they could have something in a week.
I think we just tell them, I think Mr. Kirk said, we kind of have a second interview. And what we say to them is, we appreciated what you had to say. Can you give us a little bit of evidence, the kind of evidence that perhaps, and I think it's fair to say this, we had individuals who walked in during the interview that had movable items. It said, here's your ground. Where would you like to see these? They didn't know whether we were going to select them or not. So we're basically dictating what that second interview would look like. We need to hear some stuff from you. We need that list of costs, and we need some kind of evidence of what the plan would start to look like. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that same thing, but then you see what they bring you.
You know, that's what I was saying. I want to look at potential gyms. I want to look at potential marching field, like I said. I want to look at things there so I can have that visualization. And it wouldn't be a bad idea for them to even come down, if they haven't already, walk our school grounds and then get an idea of where they would place those things. That would be good too.
Oh,
Ms. Davis had
I
something.
have two questions. If we asked that of them, I would feel that we would probably want to compensate them for the time, because my understanding, if you go with the new, or if you change directions, you have to compensate any time that has been spent. So if we're requesting more information from them, they have to spend time preparing, are we prepared then to compensate them for that? That's question number one. And question number two, we have interviews Monday night, right?
No.
With construction managers?
No.
Okay.
So we held off on those because we didn't know who
Right.
you were going to have sitting
All
with you.
right.
If we had set those up, you would have been going into those blind. I mean, you would not
Yes,
have,
that
you
was
would
my
not have an
question.
architect sitting with you, so those are not in place. So I think the one question that you have is a good question, and that is everybody okay that if we ask them to come down and they say that they spent 6 hours prepping, that even if you all decide not to go with them, that we would compensate them? Because that was one of the things that came out tonight. Based on where we are right now, I'm not sure you owe them anything. You know, Mr. Perry's point that if you said no to them, it wouldn't cost as much. I don't know that it cost you anything, because they think they said to you tonight they hadn't done anything. And you're all hoping that they would have, so we would have incurred a cost if they had.
I'm okay with, I'm willing to pay them to update the district facilities plan because that's exactly what we're asking them to do. We're asking them to take those projects and update the cost for each project. So that's given us an updated.
If we ask and they say no, then maybe you have an answer.
Well, in a way, we have an answer, because we've actually spoken with them twice now. And neither of the, and I'm not, we did make a commitment, I understand that, and I'm not against them, they're fine people, and I think that the end product would be very good, and I think they would work with us. But they've been with us twice now, and they have not actually either time given us anything that really piqued our interest, or given us a vision that walked our area, or given us a picture of what our future might look like. I'm interested in coming back on those, I'm not that, but at the same time, they've had two opportunities that some took advantage of the first time, and that we had considered in our discussion. And I'll say this, I was very upfront, and I said this when we made our decision, the fact that we had Garrard County connections and we had someone who'd be on site, who'd be checking, that was very important to me. And they seem to understand that tonight. They're very aware and alert to this situation. So I think that they're sort of unsure of what their decision would be as well.
Okay, so, board, what do you want to do?
I don't have a problem asking them to come up with that, as I said before. Other architect firms, when we asked them to present, had them. There were only two that didn't, and Sherman Carhart didn't have one. They didn't give us what we asked for to start with, so I don't think it's a big ask for them to come up with it now, because the other firms already had it,
Okay,
and we had something to compare to.
okay.
I
I
think the
think
first and
I
last
like Mike.
interviews were the only ones that didn't have it.
I think we put it back in their corner. It's kind of like theirs to lose, so to speak, but at the same time, we need a backup plan in case we decide that's not what we want to go with, and there's others out there willing to talk with us again.
Okay.
If there's nobody out there willing to talk to us again, then
It's
we
a
have to
moot
make.
point.
Well, and I think it's gonna speak volumes to those other firms that we're backing out of a verbal agreement with Sherman Carter Barnhart. So we lose credibility when we do this,
Well,
in my opinion. But I don't know how much that means to anybody, but that,
and
you
I
lose
agree
credibility when
with
you
you.
back out of your word.
I agree with you. It's kind of like, to me, I'm sorry, me being an old coach, it's like we're in a ball game and one of my players foul out. We're still gonna play the game. We're gonna give it our best effort. Now, that's kind of maybe a poor analogy, but that's a whole lot of what's happened. They had an all-stater foul out.
Okay. Do I have a motion to that effect?
The foul out?
To have Mr. Stowe contact them and to come up with what we've asked them to do next Thursday, and present it at our board meeting on the 19th.
So,
And additionally, add to that he contact others for interest as well. Is that what we
Yes.
want to do?
If you could go back and reference notes from that meeting, you would be able to determine who that second candidate was. Because we narrowed it down to two,
Well, there
Just go
were
with
two
the
others.
but we narrowed it down to two in that meeting based
I
on their
know.
presentation. So I don't think we ought to go back and pick up the three that we eliminated. So go back to our number two and see if that candidate would be still interested in the project.
Actually, there were two in my conversations with you all. But
Well, I mean, we have board minutes where we narrowed it
Oh, I
down
know.
to two with your voting, so it would only make sense to follow our own decisions that were made at that time.
And that too may take care of itself. If you go back to the runner-up and say no, then you gotta go back to the next.
so what I suggested here was perhaps a motion that just says a motion to ask Sherman Carter Barnhart to provide a cost list, possible project groupings, and include some visual samples at next Thursday's board meeting. wouldn't necessarily have to be super long. They can provide a lot of this to your hands to be able to look at, if that covers what you all would like it to cover.
Understand it?
I think the motion does, but now we're gonna, Kenny asked you to add on that you're gonna do some research. So
So
should
you
that be a
want that in the
separate motion?
motion?
Should that be a separate motion, or you want to include it in this motion?
So that just should be something, as a matter of fact, we're gonna do anyway.
I don't think you need to put that in motion.
Okay.
Well, it needs to be documented in the minutes,
Yeah, I
if that's
was
our
gonna say.
plan, so.
Well, they'll be in our discussion.
I will make the motion that we ask Sherman Carter Barnhart to come back to us at the next board meeting with an updated list of the cost of the projects that we've identified, a visual representation of what those groupings may look like between the larger projects, medium-sized projects, and small projects. And I would make the motion also that you go ahead and contact that second firm that was our second choice to see if they might still be interested in having a conversation with us.
Okay, you've heard Dr. Lamb's motion. Do I have a second?
Second,
I think Ms. Davis got to jump on.
I defer to her.
All right, is there any other discussion? All in favor, let me know by uplifted hand. All board members voted in the affirmative. That concludes our special call business meeting. I'll entertain another motion right now to adjourn.
I'll make that motion, that we adjourn.
Mr. Murray made the motion, do I have a second?
I second it.
Ms. Davis seconded. All in favor, let me know by uplifted hand. All board members are in favor. We are adjourned, and thank all of you that joined us on Facebook and also YouTube. Appreciate your interest.